Hi there, how are you doing? The following presentations, 7 in all, are designed to familiarise you with the current aircraft serving with the Royal Air Force. Now, to tell you something about them, their purpose or role, and in some cases their history, and of course to guide you into being able to recognise them. You know, aircraft recognition. So our next section is all to do with training aircraft of the Royal Air Force and of the Air Training Corps. Starting with the BAE, used to be Hawker Siddeley Hawk, Mark 1 and 2, the short Tucano Mark 1, the Grob Tutor, and the Grob G103A Viking glider. Now, back in the early 1970s, it was decided that the Folland Gnat advanced jet trainer of the Royal Air Force needed to be replaced, and an aircraft was designed by Hawker Siddeley Aviation in Kingston. It eventually became BAE Systems Hawk, a British single-engine jet advanced trainer. It was first flown at Dunsfold, Surrey in 1974 as the Hawker Siddeley Hawk, and subsequently produced by its successor company, British Aerospace and eventually BAE Systems. In 1968, Hawker Siddeley Aviation began studies for this training aircraft, initially as a special project for SP117, and the design team was led by Ralph Hooper, who I had the privilege of working under when I worked at Hawker Siddeley Design Group. Now, back in the 1960s, the Royal Air Force aerobatic display team, the Red Arrows, were equipped with Hawker Siddeley Gnats, and it seemed obvious to us at Hawkers that the new Hawk was going to be the mount for the future Red Arrows, as it is today the most famous users of the Hawk. So here we see our favourite aerobatic team getting ready for another air display. So while they get on with that, I'll tell you something about the aircraft. It has a crew of 2, a student in the front cockpit and an instructor in the rear cockpit. It's powered by a Rolls-Royce Turbomaker Ardua Mark 951 turbofan with FADEC, which produces 6,500 pounds of thrust. It has a maximum speed of Mach 0.84, which is 638 miles per hour at altitude. It has a range of 1,565 miles and a service ceiling of 44,500 feet.
Coming left, keep rolling, keep rolling, keep rolling, watch the depth.
Holding the bank.
That's good time.
Okay, I'm going to take a little time out now because one of my cadets once asked me what those wiggly lines are on the transparency on the canopy of the Hawk. The answer is it's what's called an MDC, or miniature detonating cord. It's an explosive device that, if the pilot has to eject, will shatter the transparent section of the canopy to allow the ejector seat to pass safely up through and out without having to eject the canopy, which the aircraft needs a lot of forward speed. It was originally developed for the Harrier, and it found its way onto the Hawk design. I've also seen it on the Tucano.
Horizons there, we're upside down, ready for the split.
So there you are, interesting little factoid there.
Right. Break. Break. Stop. Okay.
Back down to 300 feet. Clear right and pull, 7G.
Okay, so let's take a look at her. Isn't she a beauty? You can see the forward and rear cockpits with the canopy and the miniature detonating cord over the top, of course. On the nose there is a pressure head pitot just above the landing light on the nose. The engine intakes are just about in line with the rear cockpit and set low. The wing is fairly straight, and you can see on the wing it's equipped with SNEB rocket launchers and a combat fuel tank, so the aircraft can be used for combat training as well as basic training and advanced training. You can see the ventral air brake deployed there. For some reason it has a letter F attached to it, but there you can see it. The tail fin is that typical Hawker beautiful shark shape, and the tailplane has a pronounced anahedral, that's pointing slightly downwards. This view, of course, now gives you a better view of the wing. You can see that it's raked back on the leading edge, but less so on the trailing edge. You can see that the tail fin is set slightly forward of the tailplane. Now this Hawk is set up for air-to-air roll with the AIM-9 sidewinder mounted on the outboard store station on the wing. And also at the back, just beneath the fin, on the underside, you can see the two ventral strakes. And this still shot shows a red arrow coming straight at us with its ventral air brake deployed to slow it down just a little. And here are the specs once again. Now we're coming up to another aircraft, which is the T2. The T2 is a slightly more advanced version than the T1, but in airframe it's not really very different. The thing you'll notice about this aircraft coming up, the T2, is that it has a slightly longer nose because it has a different avionics pack built into it. That's all the electronics and everything. You can see that strange square sensor on the leading edge of the tail fin. The primary difference between the T1 and the T2 is that the T2 has an all-glass cockpit featuring multi-function displays and TV screens, which is similar to the type of cockpit that the pilots will encounter when they go onto aircraft such as Typhoon and Lightning II. So it's got a more up-to-date cockpit display as opposed to the normal gauge display that you get on the Mark 1.
That's good, Diamond. Three 50 knots. Good nose tail separation, about 6 feet is what we want. And hold the depth.
Smoke on. Dead.
So you can see here the difference between the Mark II and the Mark I is that the Mark II has additional kind of sensors and aerials mounted on the wingtips and the upper section of the tail fin, including all sorts of different avionics equipment and very, very high-tech stuff. In other words, brought up to date. And in this shot you can definitely notice the difference in the length of the nose on the T2 and also the high visibility black paint scheme that training aircraft use these days. Okay, so here come the specs. So I guess we'll be seeing the Hawk as the main advanced trainer for the Royal Air Force for many years to come. Okay, now we come to the second aircraft in this section. This one's got a propeller on the front. This is the Short Tucano Mark I. The Short Tucano is a two-seat turboprop basic trainer built by Short Brothers of Belfast, Northern Ireland. It's license-built version of the Brazilian Embraer EMB 312 Tucano. and I thought I'd let you watch a few aerial sequences of this aircraft with some really nice music. So enjoy!
Well, I started out down a dirty road. Started out all alone, and the sun went down as I crossed the hill, and the town lit up. The world got still. I'm learning to fly, but I ain't got wings. Coming down is the hardest thing. Well, the good old days may not return, the rocks might melt, and the seed may burn. I'm learning to fly, but I ain't got wings. Coming down is the hardest thing.
That was Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers there. Okay, let's take a look at the aircraft now. So as you can see, it has a fairly conventional wing, tapering slightly back on the leading edge and tapering forward on the trailing edge. The wing has slight dihedral. You can see the cockpit canopy there with the instructor in the back seat, the student in the front. The tail fin has got a kind of a fillet leading to the sloped leading edge and the slightly inverted sloped trailing edge. The tailplane looks pretty conventional. It's powered by one Garrett TPE 331-12B turboprop, which produces 1,100 shaft horsepower, and it has a four-bladed Hartzell constant speed, fully feathering reversible pitch propeller, which is 7'10" in diameter. And the short Tucano has a maximum speed of 315 miles per hour. It has a range of 899 nautical miles and a service ceiling of 34,000 feet. And this picture shows an early Tucano in the original training scheme colours of the Royal Air Force, red and white. Okay, spec sheet coming up. I hope you enjoyed the musical interlude I put earlier in the presentation. Learning to fly, that's what it's all about. And if you're learning to fly, starting early is a good place to start. This is the primary training aircraft for the Royal Air Force Air Cadets, or the Air Training Corps. So let me introduce you to the Grob 115 Tutor. And here's some air cadets with their instructors practicing a little formation flying. Okay, the Grob 115 Tutor is a general aviation fixed-wing aircraft, primarily used for flight training. It's built in Germany by Grob Aircraft, Grob Aerospace, and it's powered by one Lycoming AEIO 360 B1F/B 4-cylinder air-cooled horizontally opposed engine, which produces 186 horsepower. It has a 3-bladed variable pitch propeller, a cruise speed of 115 miles per hour, a range of 620 nautical miles, that's 710 miles, and a service ceiling of 10,010 feet. And you can see the Tutor here has a very good bubble canopy, giving all-round visibility to the crew who sit side by side, a one-piece windscreen. You can see from this picture the fairly conventional tail fin, raked up on the leading edge and straight down on the trailing edge, standard tailplane, and the wing is a straight wing with slight dihedral. The tricycle undercarriage, nose wheel and main wheels have got covers over them called spats. Okay, specs coming up. Okay, our last offering is coming up now on the training aircraft section 3. This is the Grob G103A Viking glider. This is the glider that is currently being used by the Royal Air Force Cadets or Air Training Corps, and it's a German high-performance 2-seat sailplane made by Grob Aircraft. The aircraft has a T-tail configuration and is fitted with non-retractable undercarriage and upper surface air brakes. It's of glass fibre construction, and it is designed for training, high performance and simple aerobatic flying. It has a crew of 2 and a maximum speed of 160 miles per hour. Okay, once they're released from the aerotow, these guys will be looking round for lift. I'll explain what that is. And when the sun beams down on the ground, it heats up the ground, and the air above it gets heated as well. When enough mass of air gets heated, air does what it usually does when it's heated, and it rises like in a great big bubble. If anyone's seen a lava lamp that used to be around in the 1970s, the way the wax lifts like a great big bubble, that's what air does. And if you can fly into that air, even though you can't see it, it will be like an express elevator ride, higher and higher and higher. And that's how gliders manage to stay up. It's called soaring. So the general idea is that if you don't manage to get any lift after your launch, it will be a fairly short flight, a few minutes back to the ground. But if you get lucky and you get lift, you could be up there for hours and hours. So, fingers crossed. So that's the Viking, where many cadets get their first ever flight. It's a fairly conventional, high-performance two-seat glider with a main wheel in the centre and a smaller nose wheel which do not retract. It has the air brakes you can see popped on the top of the wing there to control speed and descent on particularly landing. It has a T-tail, which is fairly common these days. And so with the specs page coming up for the Viking, it's time to wind things up. I hope you enjoyed this section 3 on training aircraft of the Royal Air Force and the cadets, and hope you tune in for the next one, which will be section 4. So until I see you next time, take care, look after yourselves, and happy trails.